Rob and Dolly, Life to Life, welcome to our show today, and we will discuss your novel, which I read. It is called Breathing, Loss and Wonder. And right from the beginning, I want to say that this is a novel about a lost man and a found future.
Thank you.
I so much loved the song, and the song that was sung by you as a metaphor, I want to say, because your narrator had to make a decision. He had to decide which way he wants to start, because we have two characters in your novel. The first one being a grown-up adult who was grown up in Wrocław, in Breslau. Yep. And the second one being a little girl aged 13, Anna. And as a reader, I could make up my mind whose steps I would love to follow, or is it even important to follow one or the other one, Rob?
So it starts in 1987. She's 7 years old. And then the second half of the book, she's 13. So, but that's the one choice. I think about the movie Wonder Boys, and I don't know if you've discussed this movie before. It's about a writer that's having not writer's block, it's the absolute opposite, where he just can't stop writing. And his student makes an interesting observation. She says to him, when you talk to us in class about writing, you say a writer has to make choices. You don't seem to be making choices with your book. So every time I come to where I want to focus on a section, I have to make a choice. For instance, at the very beginning, I thought begin with Yasha, the father. And then when I switched to Anna, I always want to make sure that other characters are present. So at one point, I actually switched the perspective so it would focus on Sophia. That's Nona, Anna's grandmother, her Nona. And I wanted to sort of show her going to the hospice. So she's got her two granddaughters in tow with her. And she's going there, and it's focusing on her frustration. The fact that, the person she loves is in a hospice. He's dying. At one point, she's going off to the kitchen, and there's a man who leaves a milk carton behind. So Nona's a very fastidious woman. And in a sense, Anna becomes that kind of character. She becomes very much attentive to the little details, the little messes, and tries to keep things clean. So she has both a protective nature as well as this nature to keep things in organized fashion.
This is something very special, what you're just doing. It is that you explain to me, the reader, what you had in mind when writing your novel. And it is so the absolute difference what I took out from your novel. So I'm very grateful that I get to know your ideas behind it. But for me, this novel started off as a man who's lost, has no orientation in his own life, and only is going back into the original family. And this original family is all he has, all he clamps to. And he is lost in wonder in past locations. And he has no sleep. He has a marriage that is a fiasco because he obviously chose the wrong woman right from the beginning. So this is a story that really caught my mind because I'm a seeking soul and I found what I was losing in your novel. This is a great thank you from my side.
Thank you.
Yes.
Thank you very much. Thank you kindly. Well, it's very interesting because when it first started out, I just was going to focus on Anna, but then more and more, we actually did, I can't remember when we talked about it, where I did parts of my novel with you. I don't know if we did that in one of our podcasts or something, but I realized he has to be front and foremost as much as his daughter. Because they're kind of on parallel paths in a sense. Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. He's just a little bit ahead. If you look at like train stations, like he's coming up to these stations and she's coming up behind him. And what I plan for future novels are all connected, like a big human comedy like Balzac, is that she starts to understand her father more because she kind of falls into the lure of settling and, thinking that this person, like a later boyfriend, is kind of the right person, but not right in her heart. I think that's what people like. For instance, I always think about men, this whole joke. I don't know if it's like in Germany, but comedians and script writers for TV shows, movies, they always talk about men having a fear of commitment.
Mhm.
And I think that's like a false way of looking at it. I don't think it's a fear of commitment. I think it's a fear of making the wrong decision.
I think it's a fear of the present, of living life in the present. They go astray. They go into past. They go into locations. They go into former love affairs, and they don't stick to what they have. And I think with the invention of Anna and her coming or becoming a grown-up girl, it is like a companion you gave him to his side. It is like, yes, she will take over. And I really love to read one passage, which I think is
Okay.
the key passage of this novel. It is when he wants to tell her that he will leave family first on his way to a holiday. Her father entered. Morning. Morning, she replied weakly. Yasha put a finger to his lips and carefully closed the door, quietly releasing the knob. Anna reached over to turn down the music. Your mother is still asleep. I think Nadi too. I wanted to talk. He cleared his throat, and Anna, taking advantage, did the same, swallowing back her faint tears. Yasha took a seat on the bed and wiped at his blank jeans. Anna reached over and adjusted the right collar of the polo shirt. Gently. Anna grinned to break the form of the frown creasing her lips. Nimaza. Listen, I know this trip. You perhaps think I'm selfish because I'm traveling alone. No. His lips tightened into a remorseful grin. You can lie, I know. It was not. I felt I must do this by myself. I understand. And under the blanket, she gripped Nonna's rosary, drawing it closer to her side. With the other hand, she cupped her raised knees through the fabric. Next time, as a family, okay? I know I said goodbye years ago. I feel this is my chance to say goodbye again. Maybe when you are older and you have children, you will understand. Rozumiem, Anna said. Now I understand. Dzięki. And reaching behind him, Yasha gripped the chain and pulled it above his head. Dzięki. And all I believe you will look after your sister and your mother. He held out Gio's chain, the silver cross dangling from the end. I feel this is more for you, not me. And
For a moment when you started reading, I couldn't remember that passage because there's moments where Anna and her father kind of meet in the morning moment.
yes, they meet in the morning moment with hardly any surplus words. It is just a rudimentary talk. But the connection to body language is extraordinary because we as a reader see how Anna has to struggle letting her father go. It is
Yes.
the fear she most feared, and she had separations in the novel before. So
Yes.
this is another separation for her, but they are tuned in. They use the same small words like jinky, and she repeats that she understands. And he says, he gives her something. It is like dying and leaving something for her. It is, of course, the necklace, which is the
Yep.
first item of her granddad who died. And the second one is a promise that she will once be able to understand in which way he is at the moment. And this is like he, for the first time, opens up to somebody, which is his daughter, and he becomes very open. This is the first time he really speaks out what he wants, his wishes, and also what he is aware of that his daughter has fear. So this is a very, very big, huge moment. And I really loved it.
Well, thank you. I never thought of that. The fact that he opened up because you're so close to certain moments. There's so many details that you have to sort of accumulate and keep in mind. You collect the details, you organize them. I like what David Fincher talks about with directing, like extending a moment, but also you have to organize moments. And that's the one thing I always find most difficult about writing is like when you control a narrative, you're controlling information. And when you control information, you want to make sure that things don't fall over each other.
Yes, that's right. And this worked marvelously. There's a sentence which I really loved. It is a sentence I want to ask our listeners. Why? Why is it? Why does a retreat into the past feel like an infidelity in the present?
Well, it was with you that you inspired me with that.
Did I?
Yeah. Yeah. When we talked, you were the one we were spitballing and talking about the novel. Again, I can't remember if we recorded this or it was just a conversation we had in passing, but you brought up when you were in the hospital last year, remember?
Mm-hmm.
And you made an interesting observation. I was basically introducing the character of Yasha and his inability to fall asleep during this thunderstorm. And, the idea that the past, in a sense, is like a cover up, like this disappearance into the past. And you made the observation that it's like there's an element of infidelity because you're lying
I
beside,
remember, yes.
yeah, you're lying beside the person you're married to, and yet you have a longing for another world.
That's right.
So how is that not a form of cheating in a sense?
Yeah.
Because of the whole modern philosophies of life, live in the now, right? The sort of Zen Buddhist version of life, the eternal kingdom of now, right?
Yes, and here comes Rob, who is a Zen Buddhist himself.
Oh.
If it had been me as a novelist, I would have made an infidelity out of it. Yes, he would have gone astray. This Yasha, he would have met an affair, had sex with her for a night, and then returned to his wife. But you just hint at it. You are the gentleman. Yes, I'm the Aussie.
Well, that's okay. Well, I'm an Aussie in Canada because we're Easterner. But I mean, what I plan for future for him, because it's a series, is that he will meet the love of his life again, but there will be difficulties and trials because of there's an element of Catholicism. I watched a really interesting movie on the week called Yes, God, Yes, and it was about girls in Catholic school sort of dealing with the hypocrisy. You're told not to think about sex, and yet in behind the scenes, your fellow classmates are gauging and ooh la la.
It is.
So
It is a trace you already laid. I remember when you described churches, the interior, and the cross from Grandpa is also a symbol. You can see it like that. You can see like little stones on the ways to success, to fulfillment. It is that Catholicism and Poland, of course, go hand in hand. And it is obvious that there needs to be a conflict. Otherwise, you would ignore Poland and its religion. Of course, it is a must topic, but you lay it out already in this first novel, and you have several symbols. I found the first one is swing. The
swings, yeah.
The swings for me is that life matters, and Anna, of course, is on the swing. Then we have waves, who have the element of coming together as a family, but also the moments of fear, the moments of dealing with death, the awareness of death. Then we have the kiss. Anna kisses two boys in the first 200 pages, which is good.
Yeah.
Good for you, Rob. I would have made it 5, but never mind. So the first one is Andy. He is an asshole. And the reader will find out himself why he is. But Anna is so naive that she only wonders why. Yes, she doesn't say it, that he is one. The second one, Lucas. Yes, it is, of course, biblical reference. And they kiss too.
Yeah, at the end of the section. And it's in a little bit like Anna is a little bit like if I was a girl. Like, okay, this is kind of like, the idea that it's like the anima, Anna. She's my anima. She's kind of like my soul elsewhere. So everything I've done with her moments, it was something I originally wrote as a autobiographical. But the thing about working with fictional characters, you're more surprised when it's your own life, there's like elements like I already know this story.
Mm-hmm.
So Lucas is based on a girl named Jackie. So for instance, when I was young, my parents lived on Gent Street in St. Catharines, Ontario. And next door, there was a girl named Roanne, and her friend Jackie would always be there visiting. So when I was in the backyard, Roanne had Jackie over all the time. So I loved my Opa. My Opa would say, "Oh, you see Yaki? You see Yaki?" His, Dutch accent. But she just disappeared in grade 2. So in a sense, this is like my homage to her because I guess I created an explanation of why she disappeared. I don't know why. Just there's one of those things, but I just feel like life needs to have explanation. And that's the thing about fiction versus life is that fiction at least hopefully provides you a narrative in which to sort of comprehend the goings and comings of people. And I think there's enough question marks in life. I think that's why we find a refuge in fiction because we're looking for those missing pieces. We have so many ellipsis moments in life. So that was my homage to her.
Well done. And I found...
And she kissed me.
Here we go. In that game?
She did.
In that game?
Yeah, we had this as I don't know if this was common in Germany. I don't know what it was, but when we were in grade 1, grade 2, we played kissing.
Yeah, we call
kissing tag.
We call it Geile 7.
Okay. What's Geile 7? So horny 7. That's terrible. That's you're like, oh wow, horny 7, Geile 7. So, oh my Lord.
I remember birthday parties when I was 10, and we got naked in that game. But just kissing. Yes, it was still very naive, but it was very exciting.
But at the same time, like East Germany was like with nudity and all that stuff. It's no big deal. That's just it. The connotation was always about like Adam and Eve. It was never sexualized nudity.
Yeah, that's right. But you know what? I have a guessing. I guess that you hate cigarettes because your only aggressive writing style appeared in connection with smoking cigarettes.
Well, I just find them tasteless. I mean, I tried for a while to, to smoke with friends. It's kind of like a peace thing. Like whenever I have like a certain friend, like my friend Ron, when he would go out smoking, I thought, well, I'll have a cigarette with him. But I love wine, and I just find a cigarette coats your tongue to the point that wine tastes disgusting. And I thought, I can't do this anymore.
And also, because I'm psychotherapist. Yes, this is obvious that I'm having a different kind of reading. It is, especially when you describe school. And how school life? Yeah, it is obvious. It is something etherical. I said, not personal. It is that there's no pause for the brain in what you describe. It all happens simultaneously. This chaos, and I asked myself, how long does it take to write something, and how long does it take to experience that? I think you fast forwarded the tempo in the school episodes. It is like
I actually revised them, so that's what I was concerned about when I sent it off to you. I realized that these school episodes were disjointed, they were fragmented. So I made it a little bit stronger, and I connected them to the rest of what happened. So this is instead of what you read now. These school episodes are now connected. It's like the week after Gio has passed and she's come back. Mm-hmm. So I have the episode with her friend gets her in trouble, but I brought her to the principal's office because I just thought there should be, and then I connected it to the wind. I connected it to other episodes. I also have the moment where, do you remember where she's putting the flowers in the boy's hair?
Yep.
I connected that with the sort of idea of like forgiveness when Gio and her were beside the vines, and he was saying you have to forgive. So this is like he's mischievous, she's mischievous because of him. So she's learned. So I actually made them much more. I took what you were saying. What was it? The idea that they were just too quick, they were too fast. I slowed them down.
Yeah, you forwarded the tempo, in my opinion. It is like an overstrain. It is an overstrain of experience school as it is. Mm-hmm. And I saw the girl Anna duty-ridden. She looks with the eyes of a kid, and she feels with the heart of an adult. This is what I experienced. Yeah.
Well, when I can still remember this. There was this Lincoln Mall inside St. Catharines, and it was an ugly place. There was like 3 malls, and this was like the really rough mall. and there was a cigarette smoke shop. And I remember walking there because that was the best place for comic books. I was a really big Batman fan. I remember walking at one time was with my father, and I just saw this guy. He looked so emaciated and sad looking. And that image of this man has always stayed with me to this day.
Mm.
He wore like a blue ball cap, like he had like a jean jacket on. And my heart just went out to him. I mean, I was only in passing, you know, I just come out with my father and my mother, and my brother, and just seeing this man looking so desolate and alone. I mean, that's essentially what Anna is like. She's very compassionate.
She is.
And I was very empathetic as a kid. I always felt a connection to people. And I guess because I was living in this sort of cocoon where I had a solid family base, my dad was, you know, working steadily. This was like my first experience of seeing, like, I don't want to say the otherness of people, but the sorrow in others.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Yeah.
And the idea that, you know, it's, you know, that whole idea when you're a child, you think that your experience is the norm. Like it's just basically a variation of the norm, but everyone has a father that works steadily, a mom that stays home. And then this is the first time I saw someone that looked like he doesn't fit what I expect life should be about.
Mm-hmm. Then we talk about Gio. Gio is the granddad who dies in hospice.
Mm-hmm.
And I was really taken in by the beauty of love in the short passage before he dies, the day before he goes. And he does not want to fall asleep. I think this is something very typically for people who are full in life themselves. There is this famous journalist from BBC and who is about to die at the moment, and she is ill with cancer, and she doesn't want to fall asleep, and he has no fear at all of death, and he just wishes for a tiny little element, a bulb, because the bulbs in his hospice break also so often. So it is this little talk this really caught my mind. It is my heart, to be honest. It's really sweetly written.
Well, I just like the idea that, you know, even I think towards the end, we're still focused on the little things sometimes.
Yes, it is obvious that this is the case. They are happy with what they have. Yes, it's only tiny elements that are missing, nothing else, not the huge picture. This is,
but also it's connected with the three lanterns, the story, the fairy tale, which comes from both Poland and from the Brothers Grimm. So that's an element of the fairy tale. Like what I love about Josef Roth, the Austrian writer, is that he takes the everyday and he almost creates like a fairy tale element. Like it's almost like someone telling a tale from thousands of years in the future, looking back.
Mm-hmm.
And I feel like there's a magic in like fairy tales that we need to sort of bring back into life. There's such, I guess that's why I don't like modern writing, because it just feels so raw and naked. It doesn't feel like it has a love of the magic in life.
Yes, that's right. The magic in your novel comes from the relationships of the characters. And I think any figure is created by the narrator and his mood in this novel, of course. And now, please excuse me saying that they are all treated like tiny material of a maelstrom called disaster. And they have the limitations of a migrant's soul. And these characters are like shattered pieces of life, of images, of thunder and of lightning, of something that the other one loved. And the sheer amount of characters in your novel didn't put me off, is not disturbing for me, because they are all one. They all seek one dimension, which is completeness. This is how I understood it.
Wow, what interesting interpretation. I don't know how that was really beautifully put. I mean, I want to ask though, did you find the characters three-dimensional at the same time? I hope they had layers to them.
The main characters were three-dimensional. They had all the dimensions they needed, but all these side characters fulfilled their purpose. Yes.
Okay. Well, they're kind of like, I guess that's what you have to do as a writer. You can't always focus on every detail in the background.
Mm-hmm.
But these characters will be explored more. That's just that I'm introducing them.
Yeah.
But I like giving moments. Like my favorite little moment with outside characters is when Yasha is in Poland and he sees this British couple. They're trying to pronounce the names of the Polish cities. and the server is very he's like a servant with them. He's very easygoing. There's like this gentleman quality in him, and Yasha watches the couple go off, and there's a kind of, I guess they're chubby, they're plump, they're roly poly English, but at the same time there's a magic to them because they're still in love.
Mm-hmm.
And I love writing that moment. I mean, it's not based on anything. It just came to me, this idea of that, we have this sort of idealistic view of romance and love, this sort of steamy version. For instance, the name Fabio. It's very funny. I had a student whose daughter was dating a Fabio, but I mean, like Enrico, Marco, Fabio. It's just a typical name right here in Germany, right?
Yes, it is. Mm-hmm.
But if you mention the name Fabio to an English speaker, everyone has the image of their mind of the long blonde-haired man with big muscles on the romance book cover. So that's Fabio for us.
Oh, okay.
So this image of this couple, this sort of everyday romance, the everyday. It's not so much the adventure; it's just the everyday experience that's magical. And I guess it is still an adventure.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Okay,
It doesn't have over the top, bells and whistles. I think weddings to me are like the opposite of what really love is about.
Mm-hmm. For many people, yes.
Yeah, it's to me, being married is a celebration of the ordinary.
It is. It belongs to trash stories, to be honest.
Yeah.
I like the sentence, can you have regret for something you will do in the future? How did you come to that?
Well, I just thought of the character Tim as based on myself when I was going through illness, and his character eventually meets up with Yasha later. That's my plan, where my mom was suggesting that'll be a good idea. But it's something as a kid, I often thought about when I looked back on from the future into I should say, when I looked back on a past event, I always found it strange that how could, like, for instance, my always question as a kid is like, okay, I went through an incident where I was being bullied.
Mm-hmm.
And before the bullying, I was in a place of contentment.
Mm-hmm.
So how could I have been really content if in the future something awful was coming in the pipeline? How could I feel good about something truly? And, like when we look back, we're placing the past in pieces. And I think that's why it becomes so comfortable. And nostalgia is like just comfortable pieces of the past assembled for our entertainment. So I often think about what the future is like, well, where I am now, if I do something now, what are the consequences, the regrets? The future is basically, the past of tomorrow, right?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, you made it a yes-no question. So it is, of course, you can have regret, but I think this question wants more. It wants more than being just a yes-no question. It is. It could be a question for a second novel, to be honest, because this will be about the future. When we talk about the Prague uprisal in 1968, which is an element in your novel, it is a process that instils making decisions in the main character, Yasha, for the first time. And this main character is shown in harsh vocabulary, first time, connected to political upheaval, like a stir that needs to be overcome quickly in order to carry on dreaming. This is my observation, because I asked myself, how on earth is it possible that the tone of writing changes here? And this fairy tale, which it was in the beginning for me, was turning into a soured reality, and you even write that sentence. And he says further on, he scoffed at it as wood scraps fell to the floor. That didn't help, and it didn't stop the split from one country to the next. This is a quote from the passage regarding the revolution in Prague. And after that, we have, I made an observation which really struck my mind. It is people of the older generation, when they are asked about conflicts, former wars, etc., they never speak about the turning point. They never speak about the change, the loss, that momentum. They have vast memories that are given, but they never describe the move itself. And so it happens also in your novel. It is the move, and this is the word for it, and that's it. The big before and the big after is explained in the novel precisely. But, this is to me an explanation, it is like a trauma, and a trauma should not be wakened up in order not to destroy the person who has experienced it. And this is the reason why you take your time for all these explanations. You can't just throw them on the street in one novel. You need to do more than one in order to solve that riddle.
Yeah, and the move, when they make the move, I just thought, well, there's so many details in the lead up and the lead after that the move itself I thought would be just, it happens.
Yes.
And I've done research about that. For instance, in I guess it was in the 60s and 70s, that the Jewish people of Poland, they were given carte blanche to leave. It was okay. And I just figured the character of Leo, so Yasha's brother, being involved in the black market, could find a way. And the reason why he's doing this is to protect his family. So I met a man from Hungary. He lived on my street when I was in Kingsville. And how he got to Canada was simply, he said, I'm going on vacation. And then one by one, his family members went on vacation to Canada, didn't come back.
Great.
So that was one method I found out. And then again, I spoke with a Polish scholar back in 2014, and he was mentioning this, and I did research. So I mean, I don't know how realistic it is, but I just thought in the context, I think it's one method because, there was before the wall came down, there wasn't really a lot of immigration in Poland between like 1960 to 1980. So you only started seeing that around the time of 1980s. Like when I was younger, there was like people from Poland, but many generations. And then there's the newcomers. Mm-hmm. So, for instance, around 1990, we started seeing a huge influx of Polish people coming to Canada. So I thought for this story to take place, in some ways, it's, the character of Yasha is both a combination of my father and my mother, because there's an element of distance between myself and my father. But at the same time, there's an element of closeness that Yasha and Anna have. That's my relationship with my mother.
Oh, yeah.
So my father, and that's just it, my father, when he never really talked about the move. For instance, there was only so many things I found out about what happened the day when they actually said, we're leaving, or even like the day of the actual exodus. So my grandmother, up to the very last minute in Amsterdam, had not packed her bags. Mm-hmm. This is 2 or 3 hours before they have to go to the airport, and she still is sitting on the bed with her arms crossed.
Yeah.
I only found that out from relatives, not from my father. Most of the key childhood moments of my father, I found out from my aunts and uncles. Mm-hmm. So I find that there's an element of that generation, my parents' generation, where secrecy is kind of like their way of holding the past together without being hurt by it anymore.
Yes, that's right. Mm-hmm. And is it you who wrote the sentence, every street he recognizes reminds him of a life half lived?
Yeah, I think about my own childhood homes, or I should say not homes, but streets. Mm-hmm.
This is
I just think about the what ifs of life.
Yes, that's right. It's a nice sentence. And it is like he's an imprisoned animal on the strive to freedom.
And I also think of like Yasha as a potential, like for instance, coming back to this whole thing about commitment, I have not really been committed in a relationship because I find of all the females I've met, it just feels like the path has always been marriage, have kids. And that's fine because you get to your late 20s, there's this maternal clock ticking.
To our audience, Rob wants to have a wife and kids.
I do, but I wanted with the right person.
Who would do it with the wrong one? Honestly.
Of course, the wrong one would be a board game, a game of Risk, right?
And fun.
But that's just it.
Maybe.
But I just think about like what my life could have been like. There's a friend of mine out in Vancouver that we had a one night stand, and it could have led to something more if something had happened. More had happened. Mm-hmm. And I just think about entrapment. I think that's what most men fear, is that I don't think they're afraid of commitment. They're being afraid of being committed to the wrong path. And the person on that path, to me, is both a representation of the path, but also the person you want to spend the rest of your life with, right?
That's right. Mm-hmm.
So Yasha, to me, he was fragmented by his experience of having to leave behind this world that was like a fairy tale world.
And Christina.
Yeah, Christina, and then he meets Carola, his future wife. But she, in a sense, is kind of resembles a little bit of that. But also, she, it's the idea that she's a representation of, okay, this is the future I need to embrace because it's also a part of the past I need to forget. So she was like a signboard that basically said, from now on, we're going forward. So in a sense, he did that to please his family. He pleased his brother by being with this woman.
Yes. I read a book a couple of months ago, and I liked the idea, but not how it was realized. The idea was as follows. A woman who is in conflict goes into a library. It could be your library of soul, whatever, but into a real one. And she is allowed to open any book. And in every book is a possible what if of her own life with people from her past. And she always shuts it afterwards and says, oh, no, this is not the life I want to. So this idea was really nice. I think that was very original. But in a way, it was done very boringly. So, and this is what I don't like. Your novel
was poor.
Your novel, coming back to it, is structured in a very nice manner because it reminds me of a big sonata from a classical music piece. And I even liked the translation of the poem in the end. So the reader even gets a poem, and he gets how do you say that when you pray? A prayer? Yes, a prayer.
A prayer.
Yeah. And I always imagined when I shut a chapter, I always imagined turning the golden leafed pages in the red velvet book. Yes, it was like a treasure reading it from chapter to chapter.
Well, music plays a big part, and I'm glad you mentioned that. For instance, like the music I'll be using for this podcast episode is from Prelude Number 13.
Of course,
I play it myself.
Ooh.
And it's the piece that Yasha hears, and that's the piece that attracts him to Christina when he's in his youth. So I think about music all the time and the structure, like the A, B, B, A, recapitulation, dramatization, all these things. So Chopin is a big influence because Chopin never returned to his homeland, in a sense that Chopin is a figure that kind of haunts Yasha, because when he finally gets back to Poland, it's the first person he thinks about, like, okay, I'm doing something that Chopin, one of his favorite composers, never achieved.
So to sum it up, dear listener, this is a novel that is about a man who is a very romantic soul and who has to survive in an ocean of banalities. But
bagatelles.
Yeah, but the big but is the huge surprise of that novel. So you must read it.
Thank you. You're very good advertising. I've already got 3 rejections so far, but they're it's okay.
That's part of the game.
I know, it's one big game.
I'm very optimistic. You will make it.
Me too. Thank you. I've been working hard, so I love this book. It's my baby.
It is your baby, and it is mine now too. So
thank you.
We will let it out into the world.
I'll send you the updated chapters of the school so you can see what I was talking about.
Yeah, that's great. Thank you very much.
Okay.
So thank you for today.
Thank you. You're a perfect PR person.
So any PR people out there, come on, contact me.
Yeah, she's
just joking.
She's up for it. Literary PR from Doris.
Yeah, I'm just a reader. Today. I'm just a reader.
Dolly PR.
Yeah, Dolly PR. Dolly and Rob. Rob and Dolly. Bye-bye.
Life to life. Ciao. Mach's gut.